The first 6 stages had seen plenty of big names lose time and the race lose 16 men. And we hadn't even reached the mountains. They were up next. La Planche des Belles Filles was the first summit finish of the 2012 Tour de France. In fact, it was the first time the Tour had ever been up here. As climbs go, it wasn't massively high, just over 1,000 metres in altitude, and at 5.9 kilometres, neither was it particularly long. Although longer than it was before the local council decided to add an extra kilometre of paved road and sacrifice a meadow for a car park, much to the disgust of environmental groups who actually tried and failed in court to stop the race coming up here. So, given all that, you might wonder why the Tour would go to the bother and bad publicity of including it on the route. Well, the answer was steepness. What it lacked in sheer size, it made up for in leg-sapping gradient, including a final 150-metre ramp that might have been as steep as anything the riders had ever faced to a mountain summit finish. Mark Cavendish clearly wasn't going to win a sprint here, so he was doing his bit for the yellow jersey cause early in the stage, setting the pace and delivering the bottles. In fact, the whole Sky team was working from the off, establishing a vicious tempo that had people popping off the back as the race hit the final climb.
Bradley Wiggins is now sitting in third position, comfortably as you like, with his teammates in front of him. Yes, and he's also being looked after by Chris Froome. There's an absence of the red and black jerseys there of Cadel Evans. Cadel has said for the moment he feels that Sky have the best team in the race, but he's relying very heavily on TJ Van Garderen, and there he is. Van Garderen shouldn't be unhitched here. That's a little bit of a surprise. The first day in the mountains does strange things. This is an amazing race right now, because this is Ivan Basso we just saw back to the head of the race of 4 kilometres to go. Michael Rogers still breaking this field up and discharging good riders now out the back. Team Sky on this sort of performance is annihilating the field, and Frank Schleck has been unhitched again at the back of the race. There he is, number 11. This is Sylvain Chavanel, started the same time as Bradley Wiggins in these overall standings this morning at 7 seconds to the yellow jersey. Sylvain Chavanel in the pale blue there is in contact with Fabian Cancellara, who's riding, for a man who's good at the flatlands, a very good defensive position. This is becoming a very small group indeed, and now we thought that Team BMC Racing was the strongest team of the two of the big challengers. Well, it's turning out to be Team Sky, because they've still got Richie Porte, Chris Froome, and of course Bradley Wiggins there. Cadel Evans is pretty much on his own in this group. And right on the back and just hanging on was the Olympic champion Samuel Sanchez here. Cadel Evans has got his hands full now. 3 Sky riders in front of him, and he sits in 4th place. 31 at the back of that line is the Olympic champion, Samuel Sanchez. But Team Sky are trying to write Cadel's team out of the script, and they are piling the pressure on with Richie Porte. That's Wiggins in 2nd position, 105 in 3rd position. He's the cat in the box for Team Sky. This is Chris Froome. He was born in Nairobi, Kenya, in Africa, at 6,000 feet in altitude, and now today he's riding at the top end of the Tour de France. He finished 2nd overall in the Tour of Spain last year when he was trying to help Bradley Wiggins to win that event. And in all honesty, that was a mistake by Sky. If Wiggins had helped Froome, he would have won that race last year. But that's history now. Froome is here to help Wiggins win the Tour de France, and it just shows who the strong men are. Wiggins has 2 allies on this climb, and Porte is setting the pace. Behind him now at 3 kilometres to go is Froome. Frank Schleck, number 11, is looking for help now and looking into the face of a man he should be ahead of, and that's the yellow jersey, Cancellara. Well, all of a sudden, you know, Frank Schleck went through a very hard period and he really couldn't get his legs ticking over, but when he felt that he was losing time, he said, well, I've got to limit my losses on a day like this, and he's taken off in pursuit to try and get as close to as possible to the men at the top end of the overall standings tonight. If the race was to finish right now, the man who would be the new leader of this race is the man in 2nd position, and that, of course, is Bradley Wiggins. There, though, Cadel Evans on the left-hand side in the red and black jersey of BMC Racing. Phil, his face is not giving anything away. Vincenzo Nibali in the lime green jersey is the other rider there. He said, I'm not impressed with Bradley Wiggins at all, but I wonder if he's impressed with the team this afternoon. The rider in the red and white just behind Nibali there, of course, is Denis Menchov. Man we've often referred to as the silent assassin, who is just not doing anything wrong. He sits 5th overall in this race. He is with the group and he's profiting by the teamwork of Team Sky. Well, Tasmania is only a small island. It's part of the Australasian continent, and I have to say they're very proud of Richie Porte, who is doing a tremendous job at the front. Cancellara, he's stretching the elastic. It hasn't quite snapped. Well, the crowd is enormous. The lead group being spearheaded by Team Sky, tagged onto their coattails, and France will be delighted, is the youngster Pierre Rolland, who won at Alpe d'Huez last year. He is now finding himself in a very, very select group indeed. Also, here's the Estonian Ryan Taaramäe, as this group now is down to about 8 or 9 men. It's looking now as though Bradley Wiggins will be the next leader of the Tour de France.
Well, what is amazing, Phil, Wiggins is the man in second position. Just look at the suppleness of the way he's pedaling there. He's got a very low gear. He's keeping himself well inside of his maximum ability. He's been overtaken now by Chris Froome, who's moved up into second place. Richie Porte has not even looked over his shoulder yet. He's the rider in first position for Team Sky. He's just making the tempo for as long as he can. But I have to warn these guys, Phil, they're at 2.3 kilometers to go. That's around about 1.5 miles of racing. When they get to the kilometer mark, it's going to really start to hurt.
7 riders setting the pace to the summit of the finishing line today. This is Frank Schleck trying to get back on terms. Tony Galopin, a Frenchman, is trying to help him out just a little bit, but slowly but surely they are being dragged away from the maillot jaune as well. There is a new leader on the horizon and right up the mountain. And believe me, when we swing round the last 250 meters, you'll be amazed by the wall they face.
It is an amazing climb. That's Sammy Sanchez, the outgoing Olympic champion, just in front there in the orange jersey, wearing number 31, the title that he garnered in Beijing 4 years ago. Now it's up to the man born in Kenya, in the continent of Africa, Chris Froome, to set the pace now. He's a strong climber. He's in this team to look after Bradley Wiggins over the final few climbs of any stage. They're inside of 2 kilometers to go.
This is why the 27-year-old was brought to the team. It's to help Wiggins. Now Porte has done his job. It's now up to Chris Froome, and then it's up to Wiggins himself to finish it all off. But look how they've destroyed the peloton of the Tour de France. Team Sky, one by one, has written most people out of the script.
Number 19 there is Jaime Zubeldia from Radio Shack Nissan. He's a very good Spanish climber, and I have a feeling here he may be sitting off the back because he's heard that Frank Schleck has recovered from his bad start to this climb, and he may well be waiting to pace the Luxembourger back up towards this group. Chris Froome just concentrating in first position.
But look at the face of Cadel Evans. They know the courage of Cadel Evans. Wiggins has spoken of the courage of Cadel Evans. He knows he's going to be very, very difficult. Ryan Taaramäe is going off the back at the moment. Denny Menchov is cracking as well. Taaramäe is on the back. Menchov has slipped off ever so silently. And Nibali is still there. It is now going to be Team Sky one-on-one. Do you know what? We could see the 2 race favourites leave this group shortly.
Well, in second position, Bradley Wiggins has not showed any emotion at all thus far. Further back down the slope there, that is Sammy Sanchez. He's been caught and passed now by Tony Galopin, the rider in first position, wearing number 13, and Frank Schleck. Frank Schleck is trying to keep himself in this bike race after a nasty start. Fabian Cancellara has been brave and courageous and flamboyant over the first week of the Tour, but he's not a mountain goat. He's a man for the flatlands. Froome just looks over. Nibali is the rider in the lime green jersey there in 4th position. He said he's not impressed by these men, but he's still in contact. He home-tuned his preparation for the Tour de France in the Amgen Tour of California, in the month of May, and I think he's actually put in the right preparation, because there he is, nice and comfortably, 7th overall at the start of the day, looking for 18 seconds.
As those now very select 5 leaders move clear of the field, Pierre Rolland, he is dropping off. He made a very good move, but it's not working out. Denny Menchov is also falling back here. The pressure is on by Chris Froome at the front. How much longer can this man go? We are looking for the 1 kilometer kite. Bradley Wiggins, ahead of Cadel Evans overall by 10 seconds, is the next leader of the Tour, unless Cadel surprises and goes for gold and opens up that gap.
The gap that Cadel Evans needs if he wants to get the yellow jersey at the end of the day ahead of Bradley Wiggins is 10 seconds. That's a hard thing to do on the slopes of a climb like this, but Evans is the kind of rider who has that punchy explosion. That kite over the road there, 1 kilometer to go, 1,000 yards left in this race, but Phil, what 1,000 excruciating yards they are going to turn out to be, because the average gradient here is 14%. But to me, that's a bit of a joke, because when you turn around the corner at 350 meters to go, there's a wall in front of you at 20% gradient, which is difficult to walk up.
Well, about 600 meters from that corner as well. The 5 survivors of this riding now. Chris Froome, now in his dying moments, is lifting the pace until he can do no more. Wiggins is waiting on his rear wheel. Behind Wiggins is Cadel Evans. Behind Cadel Evans, the Italian favourite Nibali, and tacked onto the back, the Estonian rider Rein Taaramäe. We are heading towards the finish now as the stragglers are under the last kilometre. Evans makes the turn first, and that's a shrewd move.
Well, he wanted that. He now knows what this climb is going to be. 350 to go. It's at 250 metres to go that it really starts to get very, very grippy indeed. Now, Chris Froome in second position. They've got to stay in contact with Cadel Evans.
This is the move by Cadel Evans. Now, has he caught Wiggins? Wiggins has had to do this himself. Cadel Evans has hit the wall here and is intending to try and win the stage, and Wiggins is hanging on. Look at the face of Wiggins here as he tries to take the back wheel, and look at Chris Froome. Chris Froome, where has he found that strength from? He's worked all day for Wiggins, and now he is racing clear for the stage win. This is a little piece of history for Chris Froome as well, as he heads up towards the line now. Chris Froome is stealing the stage on the day, and Wiggins is going to be the next leader of the Tour. Chris Froome comes up towards the line. He's opened the gap over Cadel Evans. Cadel Evans cannot close that gap, and Wiggins is just following Cadel Evans to the line. Froome crosses the line, a tremendous show of strength, a wave of congratulations by the next leader of the Tour de France, Bradley Wiggins, in third place. What a battle of the favourites that was.
And what a result. Chris Froome with a superb counter-attack to Cadel Evans' initial jump to try and steal a few seconds. And behind the podium, Super Domestique and team leader were reunited and recast as stage winner and race leader. Fabian Cancellara, as he had all week, honoured the yellow jersey with a brave ride for 20th. But it wasn't enough to stop Bradley Wiggins becoming the 5th British rider in the history of the Tour de France to take the yellow jersey, and the first with a realistic chance of keeping it to Paris.
Bradley Wiggins bows his head to the crowd on top of a mountain in the middle of the Haute-Saône region of France. He pulls on the maillot jaune, the hot favourite for the Tour de France. The British have never had a favourite for the Tour de France before. So far, he's lived up to his tag.
For a modest first day in the mountains, Stage 7 had produced a serious narrowing down of the names capable of winning the race. Bradley Wiggins led it by 10 seconds from Cadel Evans, who had another 6 on Vincenzo Nibali in third. Rein Taaramäe had ridden himself into fourth, and the white jersey of best young rider, Denis Menchov, was still lurking in fifth. Chris Froome had ridden himself into the polka dot jersey of mountains leader, as well as 9th place in service of his team leader, with Mick Rogers right behind him. Fabian Cancellara was down to 11th, just ahead of Samuel Sanchez and Jürgen van den Broek. But the big change was the one at the top.
You're leading the Tour de France. How does that sound?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've dreamt about this all year, really, but you actually go through the process and put it into action and do a day like we did today. That was... It's an incredible feeling, really. Hadn't really sunk in yet. It's something I've, sounds corny, but, you know, dreamt of since I was a child, really. Sat on the home trainer watching my hero, my Tour de France hero, Miguel Indurain, do it. And, you know, in Kilburn, I keep saying Kilburn, but it's true, you know, an RV at the top of a mountain in yellow. It's phenomenal.
Team plans, tactics sound easy on the team bus and they look good on paper, but to execute it like that takes some doing. Yeah, and that was always the plan, you know, that's what we've trained for all year. And, you know, I was shouting at Froome with the K.5 to go to just save a little bit. We didn't need to go any harder, and I knew he could win the stage if he just, you know, just kept a little bit back. So it was a great finish for him, and my priority was just to watch Cadel. I knew I was going to take yellow, so it's just fantastic to take yellow, the stage. Froome's got the King of the Mountains. It was an incredible day.